Hello, Gravitrons. I'm More Gravity. Let's play chess. I just won this game about 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes ago. And it was a fun game, sort of a classic build. I dropped a blunder, my opponent missed it. I went on to checkmate. Let's take a look at some of the more finer details of how this game uh, occurred. D4, E6, C4, and then D5 brings us into the Queen's Gambit declined. We've seen this. Knight c3, and the Queen's Gambit declined on move 3 for white. You're usually developing one knight or the other. That's the usual move. And they transpose so very often. So if you have a nuanced reason for c3 or f3, fine, good for you. I played knight to c3 and knight to f6, simple developing moves, and I broke us out a book for this pattern. I've been pretty much championing and pioneering and made up, and that's on move 4 for white, playing c5 to try to cramp black's position, especially work against both of black's bishops. The one on c8 can find himself hitting into his own pawn color, and the one on f8 will find himself hitting into the opposite team's pawn color, the opposite side's pawn color, and also on the opposite colored square. He has very few moves available. Same here with the light squared bishop. So I'm trying to work against my opponent's bishops, and it's wise to play a move like knight c6, get the knights into things. And I played bishop to f4. I just had this hunch that knight b5 followed by knight takes c7 might happen. I don't know how to say it. Mostly, well, part of it's just kind of, it's there more than it would normally be. The bishop can't save things by protecting c7 by way of d6. The knight on c6 is not there to play. It is now on c6 instead of b8, where he could move to a6 and protect that pawn from there. So I wanted to see if my opponent had creative ideas of how to fix that issue. Let's go to analysis. I'm not exactly sure how black should proceed. e5 to kind of block to block my bishop's scope or line of attack. All right, I'm seeing that. Well, now it's the third best move for black, but also bishop d7 on the analysis here shows that maybe, aha, I like this best. Bishop d7 followed by rook to c8, as maybe black wasn't gonna castle queenside anyway, so the kingside castle is still available, and I like this. This is a good solution here. Get the bishop, even if it's to just a square right next door, and the a8 rook. Sometimes the four rooks aren't into the game until later on. Get him in on early. He's planted on c8 and protecting this very important and vulnerable c7 square. All right. All right. Bishop to e7. Knight to b5, and the blunder. One of the main parts of the game was this blunder. Bishop d7. After knight takes c7 check, both the king must move for fear of losing his queen, so he moves, and then the knight on my white knight on c7 captures on a8, giving me the exchange and this pawn that I captured on c7 as a lead in material. One of the parts about this game, so one thing that struck me here, I can force a trade of minor pieces on d6. Excuse me, I think, I'm sorry about that. The bishop on f4 can pretty much force a trade of minor pieces with bishop to d6. But it's not all that clear that after bishop to d6, bishop takes d6, c takes d6, that the pawn on d6 can be protected, so I might be trading 4 for 3 instead of 3 for 3. I don't want that. My material advantage is tighter than that. I have 3 points of material advantage. I don't want to spend one of them just trading bishops. So I saved this move, and we will see this, a little bit of a spoiler alert, we will see bishop d6 later on. I think by sort of delaying it, I maximize my value out of white's position. For instance, pawn to e3. Now the pawn chain is huge and lending so much space to white's side of the board. Knight to e4, bishop to d3. Gonna remove that knight from a powerful outpost, double a set of pawns, and trade equal value pieces all in one move with bishop takes e4. And white is doing well here. All this time I'm keeping an eye on the situation at d6. Do I head for it? Does my opponent have enough with bishop f6, or even in some cases bishop g5, or even maybe bishop h4? Not as likely, but possibly. But what's keeping me from initiating the trading move on d6 is that if my opponent does skate out of the way, then I can play bishop d6 anyway. Now it's bishop to d6 check. And wouldn't this be a strong position? Now all of a sudden this bishop d6 trade-off move is no longer for that. We'll put a bishop with his outpost on d6, and it'll be very strong cutting into black's position from there. I think my opponent decided to play, I mean, king g8 looks kind of weird, but maybe to play against this bishop d6 idea. I'm a little critical of it, not a lot, but a little critical of it, wondering if maybe king to e8. Now this space is actually valuable for helping the rook develop or support advancing pawns. I just think that with king on g8, this rook is a target for dark squared faring diagonal type people, like a bishop or this queen, like my bishop or this queen. And looky what we have here, 3 pawns in a row. There might at some point be back rank adventures to the black side of the board in a checkmating kind of way. So I'm critical of king g8 in this moment. To play king g8, I think there's better. Black has better. I played rook to c1. My idea is mostly if this pawn on b7 marches forward, then certain other ways that trades can be made on the queen side, it's possible to end up with the knight on c6 being pinned to his queen, and it's just, it's a half open file. It's closer to the center of the board and all that kind of stuff as well. Pawn to h6, maybe for the king to go here and allow the rook. Okay, that justifies g8 over e8. I like that. That's consistent play. My opponent's plan is to place his king on h7, and then the rook isn't so lonely anymore. Bishop to d6. I say, hey, maybe it's time to either trade pieces or have a great outpost for my bishop. If my opponent trades and I have to double pawns on the d file, then I'm pinning a knight at c6, and, well, okay, it's not so bad because my opponent has doubled pawns on the e file. Not so bad in terms of doubled pawns. My opponent has doubled pawns on the e file. Bishop takes d6, pawn takes d6, queen b8, queen b3. Good attack. My opponent's going to go up this pawn, at least it seems, but I want to say queen takes b7 was a more daring move than I had thought at the time. I didn't realize quite how strongly this move could get white in trouble. queen takes b. So we have queen takes b7 was played, and then finishing the idea with king to h7. What an awesome, what a weird and quirky and awesome and amazing move, and what a weird and quirky and awesome and amazing looking move for black to play. King to h7, and yet it's still best move. This is computer best. I'm not criticizing. It's one of these beautiful moves in chess that you wouldn't expect to be like in this position. Computer best. Computer best move here is what my opponent has been aiming to play for like 6 moves now. 6 full moves now. King h7. And the king, he's actually pretty darn, safe here. The light square diagonal doesn't bother him much. I don't have a light squared bishop. My queen's all the way the heck over here. And now the rook will become a powerful part of the play. That I think this is just, and not only just that, it didn't just happen that way. My opponent had to think of it that way. So I really appreciate that. I love it. King to h7 as computer best. Knight e2. That's probably what this is to be expected. Knight e2 should be expected. It's probably the best way for the knight to develop. H3 is a little bit, well, h3, knight h3 to knight f4 isn't so bad. Well, anyway, I played knight e2 and it was given the green thumbs up as an excellent move, so I'm cool with that. Now here we go. Well, remember I told you queen takes b7 was a gutsy move. I didn't mean it to be quite that gutsy, but there is and are complications over here in and around white screen. I mean, she's got to be feeling a little bit lonely. Hey guys, this isn't funny, guys, come on, that kind of thing. We find a6. This is a resourceful queen to find a6, and that costs white the pawn at b2. But then there's a few moves here that are good, and one of them was knight to c3, trying to fix that issue. Where are my queen's guys? She needs some help right here. So here comes a knight to the rescue. It also incidentally covers e2 an extra time. It's not on the it's not on our minds quite yet. We got a lot of coverage on e2, but if I recall correctly, later on having an extra defender on e2 ended up being important. I'm not sure it was the knight though, so maybe scratch that. I'm not sure. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure if that's really. We'll see though. We'll see. Maybe it'll show up. Queen to e7. I don't know. Was the pin that strong here? The pin against the knight, was it quite that strong? Might have been. Anyway, it was played. I don't really. Let's see what the what Torch 4 says for us. E5 or rook to b6. Rook to b6 looks strong to me. I like this as black is going to make white solve a puzzle to save this queen. I think pretty much we're going to a4, but then there's this discovered attack, so maybe not a4, and instead queen to e2 or c4. e5, we're looking for rook to b6 and then queen c4. Torch likes e5 above the others. Okay, queen e6. But I want to be honest, in a blitz game and with blitz timing, black to move here or white to move, I'm not calculating every possibility, right? So within that way, maybe my opponent is also not calculating every possibility. And with queen to e7, it's kind of a waiting move. to see if I'll overreach. Some players would overreach in a position like this. But queen to e7, a capture on e4, and that's fine and dandy. And then pawn to f5 sends my knight back to c3. Oh no, I played him to c5 here. Whoops. Knight c3 is the recommended move here. It's more solid. White is taking some of the chill. You know, white is chilling out a bit, kind of putting the brakes on. And why? For good reason. That white is ahead by 3 pawns of material. Knight c5, on the other hand, looks like it runs into a one and only idea kind of miss for my opponent. If my opponent finds knight takes d4, I should do adjust. If my opponent finds knight takes d4, then it looks like white is in a little bit of trouble. Knight takes d4. I don't know why e takes d4 wouldn't be fine. Does it seem like it's just about holding things together for white? If you want to look, let's look into that. The computer wants knight to d8. Knight takes d4. And white's move should be queen to c4 instead of capturing the knight. Bishop b5, the only move that takes advantage of the mistake of e takes d4. Bishop b5, I see. Bishop to b5. Okay, yeah, this is a queen trap. I think my opponent is going to... Once the queen moves, then rook to e2. Check. Looms large. Right, we can. Rook's there, raring and ready to go. And while he's still there for just a moment, the bishop's gonna take mind and make use of that and catch the early train to b5. Attacking my queen. My queen probably has a number of acceptable moves like queen a5, queen b7, or queen c8, which we might mostly have to calculate out for viability or best among those. She's got a lot of moves that she can make. Queen takes e6 is also really present as a move that requires calculation. But wherever she goes, this bishop, which is just for the moment, as passers-by on opposite directions on 2 different train tracks, as passengers on trains, right? Lovers catching a glimpse of each other, then the rook comes to e2, check. And things will get more complicated from there. I'm not going to play to f1, because then there's a discovered check, which might be devastating. For instance, rook c2 check, and when white gets a hold of himself, maybe goes back to e1, then rook takes c1 check, and we've gone up a rook, and this might be looking like it's darn near checkmate. Okay, so this follow-up move, rook to e2 check. All right, now queen a7. Right, white is just barely holding down the fort here. We've got an advanced rook to worry about. We've got this bishop that so much wants my king to step onto a light square to allow discovered check from a4, and one that, well, this one can be dealt with, but others might allow my queen to be captured. Yeah, and then let me just say, a position like this is fertile ground for mistakes. It's a reasonably open board, but not entirely open, so that already is complicated. There's a lot of pressure on Black's bishop, but Black also has this really powerful rook, and this knight is in sort of a weird place overall, all the way back on b8, but there's a lot of things going on. Both, White's king isn't all that safe, and Black's king is actually not unsafe, so we'll take that out of the equation. And all this with in a game that can not last more than 3 minutes from this moment, when it was being played. If both players go into extreme time control, it'll be under 3 minutes from here. So we'll see what happens. Right, just remember when I'm going over this game, and so also for almost all the other games, I spend a lot more time analyzing and reviewing than the game actually took to play in the first place. So my opponent, this is to honor me. I've made these moves much more quickly than I'm explaining them now, and to honor my opponent, who made these moves much more quickly, in this case than I did, and in most cases than I did, but also definitely more quickly than the analysis and review that I do. It shows, in order to make moves quickly and accurately that much, experience. You have to have a lot of experience. You've devoted a lot of your life to chess to do that. So as a chess player, I consider that an honor to me and definitely also to my opponents. So queen. Here we go. Oh, this. I was looking at this position. This position. This is just a straight up extreme blunder, right? Just a really bad blunder. So I snagged the queen and took way too much time on this move, I think. No, not this move. One of these moves I thought for too long. Here, with 41 seconds left, I took 22.5 seconds. Is that right? No, that doesn't sound right. 21.5 seconds. 21.5 seconds. I took more than half my time at this point, this close to time trouble, to play a move that really, this isn't all that nuanced a move. I put queen to c7, but glad to have gotten out of it with the resignation. Black's position is hopeless, and the resignation was a good one and a respectful one, so I'm thankful for that. They're just white, if the bishop moves, then it's mate on g7 immediately. If the bishop stays where he is, then nobody can protect him in time. To either, he still must move, and then there will be mate on g7, or rook takes g2, and then also still looms strong mate on g7. I can see down here the evaluation bar it's even simpler than what I just said. All that being fine, this is just straight up mate in 6. So that's good too. I don't normally pick up mate in 6s by calculation, but still, that's it. What is this? This is not what I saw. Is it? Well, anyway, it was a great move, a great game, and I'm glad to have played it. I had a blast and all that. Okay. Thank you for watching, or I know sometimes thank you for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm More Gravity. Have a great night.